So Mr. Hamilton says there is a framework that they have put forward to the union. They aim, he says, to restart those negotiations. Will the union agree to do that?
We've been ready to go since the minister told us that talks were suspended. We immediately reached back out to the special mediator, and we're trying to get back to the table. On parts of it, we've sent documents to the special mediator, but nothing. Yesterday, we saw a tweet from the minister saying that nothing's changed his mind yet. So we're ready to go anytime they call us.
So what about the specifics of what Mr. Hamilton says that they have put forward with this framework that they have presented? So I get what you're saying about the special mediator, but Canada Post says they've delivered a framework that signals they're willing to move, for example, on pensions and wages, and they're hoping that brings you back to the table. How do you respond to that?
On pension, I'll agree with Mr. Hamilton that they moved. On wages, you couldn't move any tinier. That's a big problem. But there are other things. Our health and safety demands are not addressed. Mr. Hamilton talks about weekend delivery, and what he's saying is wrong. He's not at the table, and we've given them all a number of options.
Does that mean you're willing to move on weekend delivery? And I think, just so people are watching, my understanding is initially they were hoping to use part-time workers, I think, to be able to do that 7-day model, and the union was against that, and now where do things sit?
The first problem is that even today, Mr. Hamilton is telling you about 7-day delivery, agreeing with you that it's 7 days, but when we're at the table, Canada Post says that they want 6 days and maybe 7 days, and then they tell us, well, if it doesn't work, we want to get rid of it. So they tell us that it's the way of the future, but then tell us that it may not be the way of the future. So we're trying to set it up so it's done with out using 8-hour-a-week part-time employees. We're trying to use full-time employees to try and figure it out. And we've given them those options, but yet they're stuck in the mud.
Can you sympathize with why they're stuck in the mud? You heard Mr. Hamilton outline the financial position of the company. We've talked about it as well. $3 billion of losses in 6 years. And sure, like I put to him, there are other things they could look at. There's culpability, I'm sure, in the management to a certain degree. But on the face of it, like, if they do what you want, will there even be jobs for Canada Post workers in a few years?
We're in a real pickle when we look at the executive payments at Canada Post and the bonuses that they're paid. Mr. Ettinger's at $500,000. Mr. Hamilton is at $300,000. I'm sitting here not making anywhere close to that. Let me tell you, I'm on my picket pay of $52 a day. So they're still paying all that money out. They're not paying 55,000 people right now, and he's complaining about revenue loss. There's 55,000 people on the street, and we need to get back to work, and they need to give us a deal that works for all parties, not just for the corporation.
And I certainly understand where you're coming from there, but I think there's also a world in which, you know, any corporation, in order to be competitive in retaining talent to run their company, has to offer, you know, a competitive compensation structure. Like, I don't know if it's as binary as you're presenting it, right? Either John Hamilton or whomever gets a bonus, or, you know, Canada Post workers are on strike. I think there could possibly be, hopefully through negotiation, a world in which both exist, right?
Well, I don't know that the head of Canada Post needs to make more than the Prime Minister of Canada. But there are problems there, and they spend on things like trucks that are sitting, rotting in lots. They're saying that they're going green, but they're buying credits instead of actually going green. Those are the sorts of things they're doing in the background. It's mismanagement, and then we're supposed to shoulder that burden when it comes to bargaining. And next year, next month, on January the 13th or 14th, they're going to increase postal rates by 25%. But they're not willing to give us a piece of that pie.
It sounds like, from what Mr. Hamilton said, they're willing to give their workers a piece of the pie, just not as big a piece as your union wants. And I have to ask again, look, a lot of people will be listening in here, 24% over 4 years. That's a big number, particularly if the company I worked for was losing money, regardless of, I know you have a different characterization of why, but if that were the fact of the matter, it would be hard for me to go to my boss and say, I want a 25% raise. How do you justify that? And how far is your union willing to move, if at all?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is it's not a company, it's a corporation, it's a Crown corporation, and it's a public service. And Minister Duclos said that last week. It's public service. We don't expect it to make a profit. Obviously, nobody wants to see losses the way that they've been reported. but they're reporting losses when they spend heavily in a year, build a $500 million plant, and then it's right before bargaining, and they tell Canadians that you're going to pay 25% more in postage next year, but they don't do it this year, so there can be extra revenue this year to share with the employees. They wait until they think negotiations are going to be over and then put the raise into postage.
I know there's a bunch of different issues on the table, but in particular, just interviewing both of you, it sounds like you're very, very far apart on wages at this point. Do you think there is a negotiated settlement to be had? Like, is it possible to meet somewhere?
It absolutely is, and I think the government needs to tell Canada Post, and when we hear the minister, we may be hearing a different message when we listen to the TV, but the messages from the minister in charge, Minister Duclos and Minister McKinnon, both have told them that jobs are to be good jobs, stable jobs, and a good job in Canada. We look at what people have been bargaining, and if you look at the federal sector, it's about 5.5% in the first year and 4%, from 4 to 4.5 across the board afterwards. And if it's a 4-year deal, that's somewhere in the vicinity, of 20%. And we took 2 years at 2% during the pandemic to extend a collective agreement. And those 2 years, the price index was at 6.5 and 4.8 or something like that.
I've just got about a minute left, but I guess my question is, I know you're saying you think there is a deal to be had, but like how it feels as though it's very far away from that still 18 days in. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but they know next month that they're going to increase postage rates by 25%, and they're not taking that into account.
But do you think you're going to be back at the table with them, I guess?
We want to be back at the table, and that's up to the special mediator and the minister.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Mr. Gallant, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Jim Gallant is a negotiator with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Still